With me tonight in part 2 of the show, I have Daniel. He's a trimmer in Colorado, so we're just going to have a conversation about life as a trimmer. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi.
So let's just jump right into it. What kind of cannabis-related work do you do? And explain it as if your grandma's listening to understand the actual tasks or whatever responsibility you have as a trimmer or in your related work.
Well, good question. I actually had to explain this to the senators yesterday that didn't know what a trimmer was. Essentially, I'm the guy that takes the product from the growing point to the shelf. Like, okay, it's all done. Now I'm the guy that's going to chop it down, make it pretty for you. I mean, the entire day. I mean, as an example, our client tomorrow, we're going in and we pull all the plants down and we remove all the large, leaves. We hang everything to dry. We come back in, 3 to 5 days or whatever the time point is for it to dry. And then we're actually going to go back and trim it and pluck it off the stem.
Okay, so back to what you said at the very beginning. Last night you got to speak to some senators, and senators, like some people in the general public, don't know what a trimmer is.
They had absolutely no idea.
And what were you doing there last night? What was asked and what did you say?
I was basically there to give an employee perspective on what risks or chemicals or things we might be exposed to, how are we affected on a daily basis, what do we feel like when we go home, and what we potentially might face in the future. And
okay. So this is like a follow-up conversation to the event you were at last night,
yes.
So it should be straightforward. So as a trimmer, is there one or two safety concerns that you have?
The biggest one right now, beyond any of the pesticides, would be the powdery mildew that most of the companies are not doing a damn thing about. I mean, they pretend to, they try to, nothing ever changes. It's consistent, and it's so easy to just make an effort, and nobody does because it costs money to make an effort, and nobody's going to spend money.
Okay, that's pretty significant. So powdery mildew, what is it? And then what's the remedy? So if I'm a grower, are there a couple things that you know that might be a good remedy?
I am definitely not a grower, so as far as like anything that I could tell you to specifically take care of it, I don't want to give input on that because I don't want to be the guy to tell you wrong, to be honest. I don't want to claim that I know more than I do. I mean, I guess I kind of lost my track there.
So the question was about PM. What is powdery mildew?
I mean, it's to notice it, like as far as what I smell or what I see, it is looks like somebody went inside the middle of your grow room, took a firecracker, an M80, and put it inside a bag of flour, and lit it, and then that shit's all over your plants. If you breathe that in, it's very harmful. You will have lung problems. You will have headaches. The skin irritations alone, you get little red bumps all over your body. Like you have to go home and shower and wash every single thing that you are wearing.
Wow.
And a lot of people that have a home grow have to get naked at their front door to not infect their entire house with everything they were exposed to.
Okay, so I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you're talking about it, because most of the discourse that I hear in Colorado is protecting the consumer, to make sure that they have clean weed, they have pot that's not polluted with powdery mildew. But what you're bringing is a perspective among workers where there is a safety issue that deals with powdery mildew. So how do you protect yourself? Like, what strategies do you do to maintain your health?
For the employee, the most that we can do, we're not necessarily provided a protective outfit. We're all, the current company I work for, we're privately contracted. So we work at multiple locations. So if we want any sort of protective gear, like as far as a suit, you could say, we would definitely need to provide that for ourselves. We are provided with face masks, gloves, and the standard, toiletries that you would expect to see. We have functioning, bathrooms wherever we go, the basics obviously, but anything additional has to be provided by you.
Okay, so for consumers, for them to understand powdery mildew, take us through either your own experience or a coworker's, like expand on the effect. Like, why can't you just sort of suck it up? Like what's the actual effect physically?
Breathe it in and you'll find out real quick. It, like, just before, not even combustion, just the inhaling of it on the plant that you're working with, instantly breathing issues, like hard times breathing, like asthma type effects, itchy and burning throat. The fever, like, horrible migraine sweat, and the rash, it's pretty instant if you have any sort of sensitive skin. I myself, I'm HIV positive, so I have a compromised immune system. So I just have to deal with it because I want to pay my rent.
Right.
I can't say anything. And then we have to make that moral judgment of like, do I step up and say, hey, you guys really need to throw this away? Or do I let them serve it to the customers that they're planning to sell it to?
Right. Well, after listening to you, it makes me think trimmers need hardship pay to deal with this health hazard of powdery mildew.
I mean, we are definitely a very undervalued service. Most places you're lucky to get $10 an hour. I used to get 20 a couple years ago before it went recreational, and everybody moved here and was willing to take 10. And the employees all know, and the bosses will tell you, if you're not willing to do what we're offering, I got 5 guys right there that are willing to do it, and they're going to do it for 10. So
right, and that for me is a bit hard to hear, because you find in Colorado there is a celebration of weed business, celebration of weed culture, but there's this hypocrisy in the sense that some business owners, not all of them, some business owners, they want to portray a positive image, but when it comes down to dignity in the workplace, a fair wage, health benefits, and all these other things that are part of a decent workplace, we find them missing. Is that something that is, based on your experience, kind of accurate? Yes. So one of the things I'm interested is, I do understand in Colorado, in a bunch of other states, California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, Minnesota, Maine, and New York, and Maryland, that the UFCW, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, is active with the group Cannabis Workers Rising. So why don't you just give me your impression of the union? Do you agree that it's a vehicle, meaning a contract, a labor contract? Is that a vehicle that maybe could address some of these issues that you're talking about?
Absolutely, because every time a boss tries to tell the employees that handle 100% of their business, from bookkeeping to purchasing to selling to bud tending to growing to trimming, when you tell us what you can and can't do, you forget that all you're doing is pretty much writing the checks. We're running your business. So don't tell us what you're capable of and what you're not, because we're the ones running your business.
So this is interesting, because I know in workplaces that sometimes a worker maybe who is fearful of anti-union retaliation from their employer, what would you say to someone who's a coworker that they're like, I'm a little bit fearful because I don't want to get any negative repercussion, including firing? How would you respond to someone like that?
Everybody's got a choice as to whether or not they want to work for a union. I mean, if you're not comfortable with it, then nobody's going to force you.
Okay, that's good to know.
This is an option. I mean, if you have a great HR department that does everything for you without fail, with no problems, good. Everything's working for you, great. If it's not, you've got options.
Yeah, and I think this is something viewers may be interested, because in Colorado, again, we want transparency, we want fairness, we want the sector to succeed for all people along the supply chain. So maybe in closing, what would you say by this time next year, are you hopeful about conditions of trimmers such as yourself, that they may be improved, and if so, or if not, what gives you that hope or lack of hope?
I mean, to be honest, the bill that I was testifying on last night, I didn't know a whole lot about it until about 24 hours beforehand. I did a little bit of reading on it, and I would love it if it passes, because there are some great things that is going to prevent the big bosses from doing what they want. Somebody else is going to be going in and collecting the samples that are getting tested.
Excellent. Dan,